All right, Coach. Last section. We're going to be talking about the matchups that matter, right? We're going to talk about the areas that Notre Dame's offense has to win. And the common theme of today is winning can look a little different, right? It's not just going through. And now, I would not be upset if they dominated in all of these areas, but winning can look a little bit different. Some of it is just hold your own, right? Hold your water. Make sure that you do your job. Some of it is, hey, you have to win this matchup. This has to be owned by you. And the first one that we have down is the offensive tackles. Now, I know there's going to be a little bit of a question mark here, but the principle still remains the same. We don't know who it's going to be, but regardless of who it is, the Notre Dame offensive tackles have to win against Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, Bryan.
They have to at least hold their own. I mean, that's the key. And I don't know who the tackles are going to be. I do know one of them, and that's Emil Wagner, and he's going to have to play a lot better this week than he's played the last 2 weeks. I thought Emil played better in the second half against Georgia. He struggled in the first half, and he struggled a lot against Penn State. I mean, now, in his defense, because of the injury to his arm, they lined up Abdul Carter against him every single snap that he was on the field.
Snap.
You know what I mean? And so somebody was like, Tosh and Emil struggled against Abdul Carter. And I'm like, Tosh never gave up a single pressure to Abdul Carter because he never lined up against Abdul Carter.
Right.
Those were all against Todd or against Emil. So you kind of are like, okay, I'll give him a little bit of a pass on that one because that guy's a dude, and you kind of like, okay, but he has not played great in the postseason, in my opinion. Emil has not. And he's going to have to step up and play better in this game. He gave up 5 pressures against Penn State. Gave up a sack and hit on the quarterback and 3 other pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. He's given up 8 pressures in the postseason. You can't have that. You got to play better than that. He's going to have to play better in this game. And he's going to be matched up against Jack Sawyer a lot. And so it's going to be a little bit more of a power game than he faced the speed game last week. And he's going to have to be on top of his game. And that includes the run game also. He's going to have to be on top of his game in the run game. So they're going to need Emil Wagner to be better. That's point number 1. I mean, we can talk about, who's going to be the left tackle and all that. Look, one of the things that was good about Emil during the season, Trev, is he was their most consistent lineman. He has not been that in the postseason. No. The interesting thing is he's had some flashy plays, though. He's had some really punishing run blocks. I mean, I still go back to the block he had against Georgia it was one of the most well-executed QB counters I've ever seen in my life, just the way they blocked it up. It's like, that's teaching tape. It was like a 10-yard gain, but that's teaching tape right there. It's like just perfectly how you draw it up. Emil's going to have to play better. And on the other side, in the battle against JT, you're going to need whoever the left tackle is to hold his own. And last year, I thought Notre Dame did pretty well against the Ohio State ends. And a big part of it was because you had a first and a second round draft pick going against those guys. You don't have those guys this year. Is it Tosh Baker? Tosh struggled. I went and counted. He had 5 pressures allowed in that game against Penn State. 4 of them were in the first half. He only played a quarter in the first half. Second half, I only had him down for 1 pressure in the second half. And he had another play where he got beat outside and he caught up, got on the guy, rode him out, and Riley stepped in and checked it down. Played a lot better. He's got to be that guy in the second half. And, I think part of it was you're getting caught up to the speed. You went from not playing to having to deny Dennis Sutton in a mean Vanover. It's not an easy deal, right?
No.
But I thought he responded well in the second half. You're going to need him to be on top of his game against JT. He's an elite player, and he's always been a guy that's at his best in big moments. He's always been that way. If it's Charles Jagasaw, okay, you're more talented there than you are with Tosh, but you're also a lot younger, more inexperienced, and a guy that's basically been on the bench for 4 months because of an injury. Yeah, September, October, November, December. 4 months because of an injury, and then most of August. So it's okay. One guy's more experienced, maybe a little bit more consistent. The other guy's more talented, but you don't know what you're going to get. I don't know what they're going to go with, but whoever it is, that could be the big neutralizer in this game. If the guards and center play well and the receivers are coming off the line with urgency and Riley's willing to make hits, but he's constantly being pressured. If it's looking like the Curtis Rourke situation all over again, then it's going to be a long day. You're going to better hope your defense holds them to 10.
Yeah.
And that, you know what I mean? Like that's where we're at, Trev. if the tackles can just hold their own in the pass game and have some success in the run game, that's where the Notre Dame offense has a chance to be really good. I think this, more than any other matchup, is the one that's going to have the biggest outcome or the biggest impact on this game. We're going to talk about some other skill ones, but it really comes down to the O-line against the D-line, especially this battle. I know the inside battle is going to be huge too. You know, Rocco and Coogan and Shrouth, or maybe it's Jagasol, Coogan and Shrouth against Michael Hall and Ty Hamilton and those guys. And that's big too, but I think this is the one that the most concerns me, because this is the one where you just could completely nullify everything Notre Dame's trying to do if you get whooped there. I mean, you're trying to run outside zone, you're trying to run counter, you're trying to throw the football, and the ends can blow all of that up.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to factor in what the schematic ideal is for Ohio State. They want to win with their 4 guys up front. And if they're not able to do that, then they have to start bringing additional pressures, which is something that Mike Denbrock has shown at times he's been able to take advantage of. But yeah, I mean, it's everywhere, right? I mean, pressure up the middle's tough. It is. And guys like Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, they can wreak havoc on your defense.
They got some guys. I mean, Hero Canu's been solid coming off the bench. You know,
Yeah.
Tywone Malone is going to play a little bit. They got another kid whose name is escaping me right now. I was watching them against Michigan State last night, and you're like, it's a pretty good football player. I mean, they're not as good as the starters. They're not as good as Williams and Hamilton, but they're good football players. They're talented football players. So there's not this huge drop-off even when they're not on the field.
The second one that we have is...
Let me ask you this question, Trevor. Do you think that Notre Dame can hold up in this matchup?
Do I think they can?
Do you think they can, or do you think that they will? And do you think that they will? Of course they can, but do you think that they will?
If you want my honest answer, it's going to depend on who trots out there in the starting lineup. It does.
Explain it. Because that could go one of two ways, because I have different thoughts on what I want the lineup to be. So I want to hear what you have to say about it.
To me, a lot of it revolves around the health of Rocco Spindler, man. It does. And we're talking about a kid that has literally given everything to this program. He graciously sat behind Billy Shrouth when Shrouth took over at right guard, and Rocco was a starter in all of 2020, or for the bulk of 2023. You know, he hurts his ankle and he battles and fights to get back every single week. But to me, I think we're starting to have a conversation around effectiveness. And on the play that Riley Leonard got evaluated for a concussion, Rocco got forklifted into the backfield and hurt his ankle on that same play because he wasn't able to anchor off of his bad ankle. And that's why that's what gives me the most pause right now. And I know we talked about it yesterday. We don't put too much weight into the depth charts that are released. But if 50 trots out there, he needs to be at least 75%, because against Penn State, I don't even think he was that. And that's going to give me a lot of pause on if they're going to be able to hold up on the interior. You know, like that's a big question mark for me. If I'm being 100% honest, I don't put a whole lot of weight in who's trotting out there at left tackle, because they're both healthy, because I think a factor has to be who's healthy enough to go. That's my biggest concern with Rocco. But I also don't believe that you can look at anything that Jagasaw did in the Penn State game and look at that and say, yeah, I think that there should be other players on the field ahead of him, no matter who it is, whether it's Rocco at right guard, whether it's Tosh at left tackle. It's where I'm at. And I don't think that you can look at what Jagasaw did and effectively say the best contribution that he can make to us is standing next to Joe Rudolph on the sideline. So that's why I say...
Would it shock you if he makes that decision, though?
Unfortunately, it would not shock me. But, you know,
it does make me nervous putting Tosh at left tackle, though. And here's why. Because they have not practiced him there at all until now. And here's the thing is, like, are you only playing him at left tackle during if that's a consideration, are you only playing him at left tackle on bowl prep? Because here's the thing is, if you're going to have him left tackle, you need to make a decision now. You know, he's the starter. He's getting all the reps. He needs every single rep possible.
Yeah.
If you're taking a guy that you've been playing at right guard for the last several months and just throwing him at left tackle in a week, I don't know how good that's going to be against these ends. That's my concern.
Yeah.
And you know, again, that's maybe more of an off-season conversation about what they did preparing him to be ready to play. But I mean, I also in defense, you knew Rocco was hurt and Anthony Knapp was fine. You know, you have that. Well, if Tosh is, I mean, you have Tosh there. So that's the reality. I don't know. I mean, and then how healthy can Rocco really get? He's going to go from getting no drive off his ankle to looking like regular season Rocco. Like, right. I have a hard time believing that. Part of me feels like the best thing to do in this game is to have Jagasol be your right guard and Tosh be your left tackle. But then if you're spending all week with Tosh playing left tackle and not getting right guard snaps, now you're screwed.
Yeah.
So you got to make a decision and go with it. And if, you know, I love Rocco and I'd have him ready to go in case Tosh struggles and you got to move Charles out to left tackle, or if Charles struggles or whatever. But I mean, he could do nothing. He could not move. He couldn't change direction off that foot. He couldn't get any drive off that foot. And it was putting him, I mean, the kid gave you everything he had in that game, everything he had, but he doesn't have anything left in the tank because of the ankle. Now, if that makes a miraculous healing over the next week, then great. Then put him at right guard and Jagasol left guard, left tackle. And now you've got a massive offensive line.
Yeah.
That you're throwing at an Ohio State defensive line that's not small by any stretch. It's not a small defensive line, but it's also not a huge one. Outside of Tyleek Williams, he's really your only like big guy.
Yeah.
You know, the rest of them, I mean, you know, Ty Hamilton's not small. He's not like Michael Hall. And the two ends are good sized guys. But, you know, if you're talking about having Charles Jagasol at left tackle and Rocco, a healthy Rocco Spindler at right guard, you got a pretty big offensive line at that point in time, Trev. I'm actually going to go do the average size. But even if it's just you make the decision of just Jagasol and Tosh,
man, you've
got a pretty big offensive line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Tosh from left to right, I mean, you'd be going 6'8", 325. Shrouth is a 6'5", 300-pounder. Coogan, 6'5", 3 something. You know, Jagasaw's
6'10".
Yeah. Yeah. Jagasaw's 6'7", almost 330. Your smallest guy would be Emil at 6'6", 290.
Right.
I mean, it's a big offensive line, man. It's tough. But my one common denominator with the offensive line is I don't care where he starts. I don't like. Well, okay, I don't want to say I don't care because I think that could factor in, especially how they're handling this week of practice. I don't know what that looks like. Mm-hmm. I hope they're not doing something dumb where it's like, well, we'll do half the practice at right guard and half of it at left tackle, and we'll just kind of gauge it. I think You need to pick one and go with it. But at the end of the day, I don't care where it is. Jagasaw needs to be on the field.
Yeah.
Right. Like you watch the performance, and I don't think it's any mystery that once Rocco wasn't good to go and the ankle was just kind of toast for the rest of that game, I don't think it's any mystery that Jagasaw starts pulling it a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's a coincidence.
Second run of the game, he just takes the D tackle and drives him like 8 yards off the ball and then plants him. Rocco can't do that right now. He can't explode out of his stance that way right now. I mean, Rocco's never been a super explosive guy, but he's a very physical guy.
Yes.
But he just can't drive. He can't drive off that. Now, hopefully if he's going to start, he's healthy.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully. But it's a tough position to be in. Because here's the thing, like, if Anthony Knapp wasn't hurt, I'd be really nervous about your ability to protect the quarterback in this game. Probably even more so with either Jagasol or Tosh, because Tosh is still long enough that he can still get a body on you right outside. But what's interesting is losing your 294-pound true freshman, if it's Jagasol at right and Tosh at left, you're losing a little something in the run game. And that's kind of where you kind of need it a little bit. Yeah. But I thought Tosh battled in the run game. He just doesn't have the power that Knapp has. Knapp's just a lot more physical kid. So, if Rocco was healthy, I'd Rocco at right guard, Tosh at left tackle, and give him every rep.
Yeah.
But with him being done, it's going to be hard to do that, which makes me think, like, dude, just play Jagasol at the position he's been playing the last month. Let him keep getting better there. Put Tosh at left tackle. You know what he is. You can game plan for what he is. Like, you don't know what Tosh is going to give you at left tackle. Jagasol is going to give you. You know what Tosh is going to give you, right? Good and bad.
Yeah.
And you can game plan for that. But you know on the right side, you're going to be moving people. And you know up the middle, you're going to be able to move people. And that to me is a very important part of this.
Yeah.
Very important part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. The next matchup that we have on here, Brian, is Mitchell Evans, Love, and Greathouse versus the linebackers and the nickels.
Yeah.
And for good reason, right? I love that we included Jeremiah Love in this one because it's
you could put Aeneas in there. You could put,
Yep.
Yeah.
Because of what Jadon Blue did to Ohio State's linebackers in the wheel game, right? Those were their 2 touchdowns. Quinn Ewers' 2 passing touchdowns were to Jadon Blue, running back out of the backfield.
Got him twice on that.
Mm-hmm. In the same game. Yeah. Yeah. So, you go through and you look at this matchup, and a lot of it we did talk about when it was, the slot receivers and what the offense can do and the matchups that they have to win and tight ends and slots. But the point still stands, right? Like that is where, especially with how Notre Dame is put together, you can't just assume that Bo Collins is going to go have the game of his career against Denzel Burke or Davison Igbinosun. We can't. I'm unfortunate as it is because I love the potential. This will not be the one where I'm saying Chris Mitchell has his breakout.
It'd be nice. Hey, we were holding them for 15 games. We were holding them back for 15 games because we knew that this one game against Ohio State we were going to.
To be fair, maybe we all have our salty Virginia Peanuts moment where like every single week it was the great one. And then guess who just ripped open the Orange Bowl? It was Jaden Greathouse. Right. Maybe.
Hey, my year-long prediction of this is the Jaden Greathouse breakout game came true. In the semifinals, maybe your Chris Mitchell one comes through in the championship game.
Hey, man, listen. If there was ever
Smith this thing, baby.
If there was ever a time, I would love it, man. Yeah. I would love it. But that matchup between, Mitchell Evans or even an Eli Raridan, Jaden Greathouse, or you can interchange that with Jaden Harrison, one of the Jadens, right? And either Jeremiah Love or Aeneas Williams. I would throw Price in there, but like they don't just use him in the pass game like that. Maybe they do this game. Who knows? But yeah, one of those. A combination of them have to win against the linebackers and safeties, Bryan.
Yeah, you do. I mean, this is where some of your chunk, and this is what we were kind of talking about earlier. This is where some of your chunk plays can come from against Ohio State. I mean, this is an area where I think they're vulnerable. We talked about Sonny Styles is a really athletic kid, physical kid. He gives you a lot of great effort, but he doesn't have great, let's say, spatial awareness. Trying to think, I don't want to make it sound too insulting, but he's not a good decision maker in space. And that wasn't just against Texas. Like you watch enough film, you realize that that's been kind of a problem all year. And you look at on the season, he's allowed 338 passing yards. He's allowed 338 receiving yards this season. Their number 2 guy in most completions and allowed. And he is, 4th in receiving yards allowed is Cody Simon. So you got 2 linebackers that are 1 and 2 on your team and allowing completions. Lathan Ransom's allowed 20 completions on 28 targets for 258 yards. Jordan Hancock, who's a good football player, is allowed 27 completions for 217 yards. There's some things you can get to there. So I think there's some opportunities there for this Notre Dame offense to go at them in those areas, not because Texas did or because Texas did that because that's where they are vulnerable and they had the playmakers to do it. That's the difference. And that's something that Notre Dame is going to need to take advantage of in this game. And when I talk about it, and it's not just, okay, I watched it happen against this team, and so I think it's going to happen against that team. No, I've seen it multiple times. Go watch the Michigan State game. Their tight ends were very successful. They had 2 tight ends catch 3 passes for 53 yards with the game still in doubt to some degrees, like 17-7 when a lot of those catches were made. We have seen teams be able to have success throwing to their tight ends, throwing to their running backs against Ohio State before this game. It wasn't just this game where that happened. Who was the leading pass catcher for Nebraska against Ohio State? It was Thomas Fadone, 4 catches for 55 yards, had a 33-yard gain in this game. And I don't want to point to Tyler Warren because Nicholas Singleton because they're different kind of cats. You know what I mean? But they had 10 catches for over 100 yards in the game, receiving in that game. And so when you look at it, Trev, that to me it's just you break them down over the course of a season. That's just something teams have been able to have some success with. Is thrown to their tight ends. Terrence Ferguson had 2 really good games against Ohio State. He had 4 for 62 in the first game they played, And he had, I think, 5 for 71, I think, in the second game they played. He's their tight end. So this is like what you have to avoid as a coach. And I've worked with guys like this, is you're breaking down film and you find, like, if you break down 5 games, you find that one play or that one matchup where a team beat them and you're like, we got to run this. I'm like, bro, that was a blown coverage. Like, that's not normally what they do. Teams have run that at them 10 times and it doesn't work. You look for patterns. What are some concepts that consistently give them trouble? What type of concepts? What type of matchups consistently give them trouble? When teams look at the Notre Dame defense, why do you think Penn State ran so much stretch and jet and pitch against Notre Dame? Because on film, that's one of the few things teams have done with some regularity against this Notre Dame defense. So they wrote it. And that's the thing here, is there's been several times where teams have been able to get some big plays out of this. And if you look at the Texas game, Jadon Blue had his game, right? He had his performance. But the Wisner kid had 6 catches in that game as well for 42 yards. So, I mean, your 2 backs combined for 11 catches and 111 and 101 yards and 2 touchdowns against them. And then your tight end had 2 catches for 42 yards and got called for one of the worst taunting penalties I've ever seen in my entire life.
Don't even get me started on that one. That one was bad. Really, really bad. But to your point, Sonny Styles is definitely the guy to go after in the pass game, right? One of. And here's why. You go through and you look, and he's been targeted 56 times over the course of the season. He's allowed 40 receptions. So that is, he allows receptions on 71.4% of targets. That is ramped up significantly in the postseason. In the postseason alone, he's been targeted 24 times and has allowed 19 receptions. That's almost an 80% reception allowed rate. I guess I don't really know the proper terminology there, but he allows in the postseason
Completion
receptions
percentage
on 80%.
allowed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of those where it's just, you have to take advantage of those matchups. Tennessee was the first team to do it. Tennessee targeted him 7 times. He gave up 5 receptions. Oregon, maybe it could be a lesson learned from their first matchup, or they saw something that Tennessee did, and Sonny Styles gave up 8 receptions on 9 targets. Same thing against Texas, where he allowed his only touchdown of the season against Jadon Blue on one of those wheel routes, right? And so he gave up 6 receptions on 8 targets. He's one of the guys that's going to have to be targeted by the Notre Dame offense. And that, to your point, those are one of the matchups that we were talking about. I do believe Jeremiah Love wins that matchup in the pass game against Sonny Styles.
If they use him.
If they use him in the pass game the way that they should, right? And also if the first points hold up, right, where the tackles and the interior offensive line hold up. But those are going to have to be something like, I have to believe that Mike Denbrock sees that mismatch. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
and how do you get to that within the structure of who you are?
Totally.
Because you're not Texas offensively. You're not Oregon offensively, meaning it schematically. You do things differently than them. So you can't just go put something in that you don't know, you know what I mean? Or you haven't done that's not within structures you do formationally and things like that. You have to do it within who you are. And that's something we have seen at times. I mean, we saw it against Penn State. I mean, we know Mike Denbrock's willing to do it. It's just, it's going to have to be creative on how to do it. And the other thing too is you got to call it at the right time. Like, hey, I'm pretty sure we're going to get this look here. You know what I mean? So, all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It has to be.
Loser. Idiot.
I was waiting.
Yeah. I tried to be nice. I'm not just trying to, because we've had a lot of Ohio State fans in our chat the last couple of days. I've been all the Ohio State fans, with the exception of that moron that I just banned and one earlier, like, I've really enjoyed y'all's contributions. You guys are talking balls. You guys think Ohio State's going to win? That's totally fine. Appreciate that. But yeah, so I've been trying to give them a little bit of grace, but now you're being an idiot, and you don't know how to spell or to use punctuation or to speak coherently. It's 4:07 in the afternoon. It's way too early to be hammered, bro. Come on now. Let's get back on track.
I was waiting. The final one that we had, and we've been hinting about it all show long, is the outside receivers will have to win certain matchups against Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke. They don't have an Evan Stewart. They don't have a Tez Johnson, but you are going to have to find ways to win on the perimeter.
Sure.
And we've talked about what that looks like, right? Maybe more of the chain movers. I'm not expecting this is the game that Bo Collins just turns into a 4-3 wide receiver, right?
Yeah, I don't see him running by Denzel Burke on a bunch of go routes. Now, okay, so can you use some double moves? Can you use an out and up? Can you use a slant and go? Yeah, I mean, there's some thing. It's kind of like Penn State's corners. They're aggressive. They're going to bite on that first move, and because Notre Dame actually ran was later in the game. I think it was it after his touchdown? It might have been after his touchdown. Notre Dame ran a sluggo with Jaden Greathouse outside, and he torched the guy. I have to find that clip for you, Trevor, but I think Riley got pressured or something like that. He couldn't see him. He got pressured or something. But I'm like, man, like I love that stuff. I've been begging for that stuff all year, and we saw it. I mean, and Ohio State does some of that, but you got to really sell the stutter and go. Like Notre Dame's guys, when they do stutter and go, they kind of like half butt it and just like you got to slam them hips down and really get them to bite and then go and use your hands to get a free release, and you're gonna have to do that. But you're not gonna just all of a sudden, like you said, Bo Collins isn't gonna all of a sudden look like Will Fuller. You're just not. And here's the thing, like Igbenogson, yes, he holds a ton, but if you can't run by him, then it's not going to get called as much. And I don't know that they have guys that can run by him. I don't know if they have guys that can put him in some of those binds. Now, there's some things maybe you could do formationally to try to say, hey, we're going to move some things around and try to get him on Jordan Faison and on some double moves and stuff and then force him to grab. Cool, go for it. So we're not saying avoid throwing outside, because if you avoid throwing outside, there's more risk if you're just living over the middle the whole time. I just think a lot of your chunks are going to be in some of those matchups, and some of those are going to be outside routes, so and part of it depends on what Ohio State does. If they play a lot of off coverage, which they have done at times, I could see Bo Collins and Chris Mitchell and Jordan Faison catching 8, 9, 10 balls and averaging 8, 9 yards a catch. It's fine. Chain moving plays. The one guy that I would look to try to get into a downfield type of situation is Jordan Faison.
Yeah.
Because, on some corner posts or post corners or some double moves, because he's so quick that I could see you using him as sort of that let's attack Denzel Burke to the field.
Yeah.
Let's get him with this kind of move. If you can get him, I mean, we've seen Jordan Faison at times go boundary. We saw him do that last year. Get Davidson and Igbenogson covering him, whether it's field, but however. When you get into some of those matchups, he's the guy that I think could maybe make some big plays. Get them in some catch and run situations. I think that's where you could be, but I just don't think you're going to your game plan is not going to be built around how can we get 4, 5, 6 chunk plays from our outside guys.
Right.
Not that theoretically or schematically it's not there. It's personnel-wise. I don't know that Notre Dame has the personnel to take advantage of that. If they had Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart, we'd be having a different conversation about how to go at them. They don't. Maybe they might next year. If they had Malachi Fields on the roster right now, we'd be having a different conversation.
Sure would. But no, I mean, winning on the outside, again, we've talked about it all show long. We're going to continue talking about it all week long. Winning in some of these matchups just looks a little different sometimes. And winning against Davison Igbenogson is drawing a penalty sometimes. Legitimately, it is. Because he's the most penalized corner in all of college football right now. Not a knock. It's a statistic. You can look it up.
Honestly, it should be more.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, you could almost call him for holding every play. It's ridiculous. It's absurd how much that guy holds.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But they are susceptible to double moves. Now, I'm not saying you throw Jaden Thomas out there to start running a bunch of hitch and goes, but you have opportunities to win. I definitely feel like it's going to be more of a chain moving type of game from the outside. I would not be surprised if we saw a good amount of slot fades in this game with a Jordan Faison, with a Jaden Greathouse. I mean, shoot, the two slot fades that I've seen Mitchell Evans and Eli Raridan were go on were both touchdowns. One of them was against Florida State for Mitchell Evans. The other one was against USC for a touchdown for Eli Ricks.
And they ran a corner route for a touchdown with Mitchell Evans as well against USC.
They did. So it's going to be it's
similar to slot fade, how you're attacking a team. It's just a different throwing angle for the quarterback.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of concept. Now, here's the thing. Riley's going to have to read that well because there's times if against a slot fade, they'll just run that corner underneath it and try to kind of get you into throwing it. Sure. Riley's got to read it. Like, don't pre-snap read it and then don't look at the corner at all. Pre-snap read it. Get your eyes in that corner. If he bails, don't be afraid to bring that check down to Jordan Faison. Don't be afraid to get that check down to Chris Mitchell. That's going to be a big key as well for me, Trev, is the slot fades are there, but they know it's there. Right. They've seen them hurt it. And when they play teams that do a lot of slot fade, that's what they do. They kind of bracket it with their corner. He'll open up, put his butt to the sideline, and when he reads that slot fade, he'll just keep rolling right underneath it and make a play on the ball. If you see that, bring that check down. Get your eyes on the slot fade. So I said earlier, look at the corner. It's not what I mean. Get your eyes on the slot fade, but you've got to see that corner. And if he's going, come right now down to the hitch route. And minimum worst case scenario, he catches the ball, gets tackled for a 5-yard gain. Best case scenario, if that corner's still running and it's Jordan Faison or Chris Mitchell, they got some room to run.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be key for Riley's read it. Read it. And I wouldn't be surprised if they run it some more out of trips. We've seen them do a lot of 2x2 slot fades. He did a lot of 3x1 slot fades at LSU. In this game, when you're talking about being against those linebackers in coverage, I could see some more 3x1 slot fades in this game too, because now you got that little option route number 3, where if they're bringing pressure out of 3x1, you got Mitchell Evans running a little quick option route there. Now you're in something. And I think that also could impact how they defend it, because I could see them out of 3x1 maybe playing that cornerback off a little bit more to try to undercut it. And then you're just picking them apart with option routes and hitch checkdowns. And then they start playing more aggressively. Then you go over top on it.
Yeah.
But I could see some of that a little bit too.
No, absolutely. There's going to be things that Denbrock, I believe, kind of has in his back pocket. I guess the hypothetical green mystical playbook, if you will, for some of those who believe that exists. But at the end of the day, Riley's going to have to be dealing, man. I mean, we can talk about winning at the line of scrimmage for the slot receivers, for the tight ends, for the running backs when they're in the passing game. Pass protection is going to have to hold up. Riley Leonard's going to have to be facilitating at a very, very high level. Because, again, there's going to be moments in this game where Riley's going to have to make a play. That has been true in most of the playoff games. Like, the Indiana game was well in hand, but again, you had to step up in the pocket, avoid pressure, and hit Jordan Faison in stride to really seal that game. You know what I mean? To really shut the door in Indiana. I think it's self-explanatory against Georgia what Riley Leonard had to do. I mean, at times in that game, he became the entire offense, So
you need all of that against Ohio State.
Yes, you need a little bit of everything. You need the second half passing from Penn State. You need the mobility from Georgia, the poise from all three, the ability to overcome adversity from all three. So
I do think if you can run the ball on them, you can have some of those downfield opportunities like they had against Indiana.
Yeah.
I do.
I do too.
Much easier said than done, though.
100%. 100%. All right, Brian. We good? Super chats. We got a super chat from Andrew Rhodes. Thank you, Andrew. The theme for Notre Dame's opponents in the playoffs have been great defensive lines. Notre Dame is up for the challenge. Go Irish.
Well, man, you're spot on about one thing, dude. This is definitely a battle-tested offensive line.
Man.
I mean, Indiana, Georgia, and Penn State all have great defensive lines. Now, I'm not trying to get into an argument about whose is better. Some people may think Georgia's is better. Depends on what your favorite style of play is. Some people may think that Penn State's is better. Some people may think that Ohio State's is better. Whatever. They're all really good.
Oh, yeah.
They're all really good. And you're going to be tested. You've been prepared for this game by who you've played in your last 3 games. You've got to be on top of your game.
Yeah, man. I mean, the fact that Notre Dame up to this point, their offensive line has seen Mikael Kamara, CJ West, Jalen Walker, Nazir Stackhouse. They've seen Abdul Carter. They've seen
Michael Williams.
Durant, Michael Williams. They've seen deny Dennis Sutton. Like, I mean, it's not like they faced
Durant. Did you mention him?
Yep.
I mean, he's a dude. Yeah, they faced some dudes.
It's not like they've seen nobody and now they face
Right.
Jack Sawyer and JT.
Right.
I mean, this is a very battle-tested O-line.
Yeah.
Good point, Andrew.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Super chat from AST12321. Thank you for the super chat. Watching the Texas game, I noticed a few times when pass rushers got home because of Ewers' immobility. Hopefully, Riley makes things harder on them.
But I think so. I think also having a guy like Riley changes your play calling near the goal line. I mean, if you don't think you can run the ball right at him with your running back, you've got other options. You can then make your running back a lead blocker, and you can run your quarterback. Texas doesn't have that option.
Right.
Plus, Texas is a I'm going to use the word finesse. I was going to say soft, but I mean finesse running game. And again, I use that word specifically because I'm not trying to bash the players for, you're soft. That's what they're taught. That's what their scheme is. It's a finesse running game.
Yeah.
That's why Georgia whooped them. That's why they couldn't run the ball on Ohio State. That's why they get into a 1st and goal. They run once and then just give up on it.
Yeah.
And run a toss play despite being outnumbered and out leveraged outside.
That was crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I in theory, I have no problem running a toss there. If you get the right look and you get them leveraged and you're in 14 personnel and you can get them inside, run that toss and not run into the end zone. I'm cool with that. Yeah. But you ran that kind of out of like a spread for me. You had like a receivers out there. And they had 4 guys to your 3, and they were out playing outside leverage on the outside. It made no sense to run that play against that specific look.
Right.
And, it cost them the game. I really believe that because now you're behind the 8 ball. Now you have to throw for 2 downs. And that's not where you want to be against Ohio State. You do not want to be in a I have to throw situation.
Nope.
But in Notre Dame gets in that situation, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to run Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard for 3-4 plays in a row.
Literally.
Yeah. You're in a little better place. And if they stop you, tip your cap to them and say, you guys are better. But no, he's right on this. I mean, and look, there's going to be times where the tackles are going to get beat.
Yeah.
There's going to be times when the interior guys get beat. Like, you are not shutting down this Ohio State defensive line. You just need Riley in those instances to get the ball out properly, get the check downs like he did against Indiana, steal some yards, get those 3, 4, 5 yard gains. And there's times you have to make people miss. I mean, I was talking earlier in the show about it, and you saw it against USC, but you saw it against Penn State too. There was a couple times where Penn State brought a free rusher off the slot, and just nobody blocked him, and Riley just made a miss. One time he threw the ball away, but it's like you went from -6 or 7 to 0. That's a win.
That's huge.
And I think of the USC game where they brought a corner fire from his backside. He sees it, and he waits, and then spins out of it, and then runs for 6 yards.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Quinn Ewers isn't doing that. With all due respect, Curtis Rourke's not doing that. I don't know that Nico has the experience. I think Nico could eventually get there, but he's still a young guy that doesn't have the experience that Riley has. And I don't know that Dylan Gabriel was going to do that in that same way. Dylan Gabriel's more of a, if the rush lanes are, if you're undisciplined in the rush lanes, which Ohio State can be at times, he's going to step up and make you pay.
Totally.
Riley's going to have to do that as well in this game as a passer. If they over pursue, you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
And as Jay Henry points out, Notre Dame's been playing really good defensive lines all year. I mean, first game of the year, Texas A&M. Georgia Tech's got a really good defensive line.
Yeah.
Louisville's got a really good defensive line. This isn't the first time. Like, they didn't get the playoffs. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's good D lines out there. Oh my, what are we going to do?
Right.
They've been doing this all year, man. They've been playing good D lines all year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heck, even Miami of Ohio has a pretty good D line. They're like really good MAC kids, but like, what's his name? The Bryan, is it Ubo? I forget his last name, but he's a really good player that they had. They had a D tackle as a pretty good player.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where I'm at on that one. But yeah, I mean, Riley presents a different challenge for Ohio, just like he's done everybody else. It doesn't mean Notre Dame's going to win because of him, but you have to defend Ugwu. Thank you, Ryan. He presents a completely different challenge than what the other quarterbacks they faced presents.
Yeah. No, I said it earlier in the show too. Ewers' gap escape and his escapability in the pocket was really bad against Texas. I'm not saying that he was going to be able to break off any runs, but I mean, it was evident that the second that he got pressured, he just accepted the fact that he was going to be sacked. Outside of the one where he stepped up and then like kind of flipped it underhand to Wisner. Yeah, literally outside of that play. But the second
there's still Notre Dame fans as of last night saying that they want him at quarterback. And I'm like, oh my God.
Ewers?
Yes, as of last night. I'm like, dude, I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
No comment.
First of all, the next time he plays a full season will be the first time he plays a full season.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm glad he declared. I'm like, okay, finally we can be done with this stupid bullcrap rumors about Quinn Ewers. But man, oh man, oh man. But he's just, you know, and that's why when you look at Notre Dame's quarterbacks for next year, I mean, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr they're not Riley Leonard, but they're not that either. You know what I mean? Like they're not what Quinn Ewers was in that game either.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I just think I kind of feel bad for the kid. He's had a lot of pressure on him, but he just looked mentally beat in the playoff for most part. He kind of came alive in the fourth quarter against Arizona State. But those last two games, there were just some stretches where you're like, that kid just don't want to get hit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, once he got pressured against Ohio State, the second he stepped up in the pocket, he stopped looking downfield. He just tucked the football and just waited to be sacked. Like there was no attempt. Super chat from Patrick James. Thank you, Patrick. If Notre Dame wins, do you think people will finally come around, or will it be Will Howard sucks and Ryan Day has to go? I can answer yes to both questions.
Well, I mean, yeah. Look, there's going to be some crazy fans that are like, Will Howard sucks and Ryan Day has to go. You're going to have that, but those are not the normal fans. I have to think that most Ohio State fans, they're not going to be happy if they lose Notre Dame at all. And you can see some of the people in the chat think, they're playing like Purdue this next week. Most aren't that way. Most Ohio State fans are going to be very disappointed losing to Ohio State, just like Notre Dame fans will be very disappointed losing to Ohio State, or Ohio State fans will be disappointed with them losing Notre Dame, just like Notre Dame fans will be disappointed losing Ohio State because it's a rival. It's not a frequent rival, but it's a rival. You recruit against each other. Your fan bases don't necessarily like each other, all that type of stuff. It's a rival in that regard, even though it's not we've played a million times like, Michigan or Michigan State and Purdue with Notre Dame. But I don't think the majority of fans or analysts will be doing that. They'll say Ohio State didn't play well. If they played 10 more times, that Ohio State would win 9 of them or 8 of them. Like you'll hear a lot of that. If Notre Dame wins, you'll hear, well, yeah, Seth McLaughlin wasn't out. That's why the D-line played really well. You'll get all the excuses. But a lot of people are going to be like, this is a really good Notre Dame team. They are. There's already people kind of coming around. Win or lose, I think the narrative has changed to a degree with a lot of people. I do. And Steven said, unless we win 42-10, I actually think winning 42-10 is worst case scenario for Notre Dame from a perception standpoint. Because I think that's when people then dismiss, well, maybe Ohio State just wasn't that good. Like if Ohio State blows out Notre Dame, it's like, this is a great Ohio State team and Notre Dame's not that good. They'll do both. If Notre Dame blows Ohio State out, I do think a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, maybe Ohio State wasn't as good as we think. Maybe that's what I think. They shouldn't. I think they should say, this is a really good freaking Notre Dame team, and Ohio State had a bad day. And that happens sometimes. I mean, Denver Broncos got the 2 Super Bowls where they got absolutely blown out. Does that mean for the whole year they weren't a great team? Of course they were. That's why they're playing in the Super Bowl. But you'll see some of that. But I almost think like winning a battle is the best thing for Notre Dame. And if you do beat them by multiple touchdowns, Trevor, it's just got to be Ohio State did some good things, but Notre Dame was just rolling. Mm-hmm. Ohio State just couldn't stop him. It wasn't because they had like 2 pick sixes and fumbles and you know what I mean? Like we saw that against Georgia. I mean, you and I watched that game. Notre Dame outplayed Georgia. Yeah. Clearly outplayed Georgia. But it's, well, this play. Outside of that, Georgia wins. We watched a different game then. You know what I mean? But that's like what Penn State people are doing. Well, we only lost because of this, this, and this. Like, well, you got outgained by almost 100 yards. You got outgained and outscored. I don't know what you're talking about. That's just my 2 cents.
No, I'm with you. Listen, Patrick, I think you're going to hear a little bit of everything from every different angle. And the thing that I've learned, especially about working this job and what I've been doing with Irish Breakdown since, really since the start of the season full-time in October, is that you hear a little bit of everything. And the minority of most fan bases are typically the most loud. And unfortunately, it doesn't speak for all of them, right? Or fortunately, it does not speak for all of them. But you're going to hear a little bit of everything, right? Like we're talking about a fan base that lost one game and wanted to fire the head coach and run Will Howard out of town, to then in their next game they won and then nobody could beat them. Like that's like it's
right. Like something that Stephen B just said in the chat. He's like, people are pretending like this Ohio State team is unbeatable, and we're just ignoring the fact that they've literally lost twice.
Yeah, they lost a little bit outside of like a month ago.
Right. To a team that's not very good.
Right. I mean, if there should be a narrative of a team that's just not beatable right now, it's Notre Dame because they haven't lost since September 7th. But
right, exactly.
Right, but nobody wants to go there.
And they shouldn't. And they shouldn't. And my point is, both of these teams are really good.
Yeah, both of these teams are also beatable.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like it's Patrick. That's just what you're going to hear on either side, man. It's just what it's going to be. So
what the narrative should be is these are the two best teams of college football.
100%. And
they played like it. And the teams that wins is the best team in college football. That should be the narrative. And I think there will actually be a decent amount of that. I do. If this is a good game, I think you're going to get a lot of that. There's always going to be the clickbait people. Guys, that's just the world we live in now. Why is somebody from On3 doing a video about Quinn Ewers and Notre Dame? Clicks. Because he knows and On3 knows that you all will watch it. And that I will retweet it and put them on blast for it. They know that. So that's why they do it. There's always going to be that. But I think a lot of the good analysts are going to look at that and be like, Ohio State's legit, but Notre Dame's going to be a problem.
100%.
No matter if it's a close game. Or Notre Dame's legit and Ohio State's going to be a problem for people. These two teams are here to stay. That's what I think there will actually be a decent amount of people from. I do. I think the way the path that got Notre Dame here, as long as it's a close game, you're going to have a lot of people saying, now, is Reese Davis going to praise Notre Dame? No. And I like J.D. Piquel. He does a really good job. He's one of the few On3 people I like. But what I'm saying is you're only doing that video to get clicks on it. You don't actually believe that Notre Dame is going to take Quinn Ewers, or that Quinn Ewers is going to go Notre Dame. You're just doing it to get clicks. That's my point. But what I'm saying is I do think there's been a lot of people that are starting to realize that Notre Dame's actually really good.
Yeah.
And if they lose a close game to Ohio State, they're going to be like, hey, they're really good.
Yeah.
And they're not there yet, which is true, but they're really good and they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, because for the majority, they're going to see that Notre Dame on this stage played a close game. Like at the end of the day, like if the game is close, I think the narrative will start to change regardless. They won 2 New Year's Six Bowls within a week of each other after not doing it for 30 years. They get to the national championship game where the narrative is still Notre Dame gets blown out in these types of games, even though they won 2 of their previous big games in the Orange Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, right? But if Notre Dame plays this team in Ohio State that is perceived to be this just unbeatable Avengers level threat of a team, then if they play them close, win or lose, I think the narrative starts to change, right? Like I believe that it already has started. I do. But a win obviously kind of pushes it over the edge.
Yeah. I mean, you listen to David Pollack talk about Notre Dame in the playoff. You listen to Booger McFarland, Greg McElroy. Like those are guys that in the past have not been overly positive about Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And honestly, sometimes for good reason. You listen to them talk about Notre Dame now, and I still think some of them are missing how athletic this team is. I still think that is being missed.
Yeah, it is.
But they respect the team. You can see that they respect the team.
Yeah.
You can see they respect Marcus Freeman in the talent that they have, even though I still think they're selling short the athleticism Notre Dame has at several positions. There's even some former Notre Dame players who like to put out content who do that. You tell me Notre Dame's linebackers don't run fast and stuff like that. Literally had this conversation. You know who I'm talking about. Literally had this conversation about a month ago. And but you're seeing a lot of good analysts are coming around. And as long as it's like if they get blown out, it's going to be right back to square one. Yeah. That's what it's going to be. Yeah. So I think that there's maybe more honest analysts out there than I sometimes give them credit for. But if you think about it, a lot of them have become that since they've left ESPN. Yeah. And they're doing their own thing now. Or ESPN people who have shows on the side that are more praiseworthy of Notre Dame in that setting than they are in some of the ESPN segments. I've noticed that a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think depending on how Notre Dame performs here, especially on defense, like offense, sure, but especially on defense with how highly regarded Ohio State's offense is for good reason, I think that's when the athletic narrative is going to start
Yes.
turning the corner. Because right now it's Notre Dame is just, we don't really know how, but they've earned our respect because Marcus Freeman's a great guy and he gives great speeches, but we don't really know how, but they just refuse to lose. And it's like, because they have really good players. Like, can we just, but I think depending on how they play and perform against Ohio State, that narrative will start to change. It's going to start turning head. Even though he's done it for most of the season when he's played, they're like, this Leonard Moore kid's keeping up with Jeremiah Smith.
Right.
Like, hey, this Bryce Young kid just worked whoever on a few plays this game. Like, hey,
boy, those linebackers can really run.
Right. Jaden Osbury can fly. That number 4 on defense for Notre Dame can really move. Like, he's done that all year, but he wears blue and gold. So you're just assuming he's
not a starter.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. But you're just assuming because he wears blue and gold that he's just a hard-nosed, gritty, intelligent guy that is just always in the right spot at the right time because he has a 4.7 weighted GPA. Like, it is what it is. But no, I think the narrative has already started to change, Patrick.
Agree. Now, Trev, that'll do it.
All righty. Thank you for the catch because I'm really happy that we did not miss out on those super chats. So
yeah, I was ready. For him, buddy.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for us here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Thanks for being with us. Just a hair under about 3.5 hours here covering the Ohio State defense versus the Notre Dame offense. But not to worry, we will be back tomorrow with more coverage of this matchup. We're going to be back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock again, and we're going to talk about why we believe Notre Dame has a chance to win this game. And we're also going to talk about some of the potential concerns that we have. And we're going to take a deep dive into the areas that they're going to need to continue to win in, why we feel confident about Notre Dame in this matchup, and then obviously the areas that if we don't get the outcome that we want to as fans, why we believe that could be. So is IB Nation Sports Talk going live here tonight too?
I believe so. Unless the women have a basketball game, I'd have to check on that one.
Okay.
But I believe so, yes.
Well, either way, as long as you have that notification bell hit, you're going to know whenever we go live here at Irish Breakdown. Also, be sure to hit that like button and that subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. You guys have seen it. We have other sports fans, not just Notre Dame fans here in the chat. Anybody that loves to talk ball are more than welcome because these are two guys right here that love to sit down and just chop it up with people and talk football, right? The best way to support what we do, and you can see that content on a daily basis, is if you subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. That's where we live every single day. We talk football, we talk Notre Dame, we talk matchups, transfer portal, recruiting, all the above is happening at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow at 1 p.m., that's Bryan. I'm Trevor Trowbridge, and we will see you back here tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown podcast.